Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
This is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper on actually Monday, October 28th, 2019. We missed a day.
Well, we're a day late. But we'll show up at the same time, so don't worry about it. It all comes out in the wash. This makes for a busy Monday evening for us. Because we had a busy weekend. That's why things got delayed. Busy weekend headlined by a Sunday afternoon opening at Classic Stage Company of Macbeth.
By William Shakespeare.
By William Shakespeare. By Bill Shakespeare. Exactly right. Although I will say that the program, the new virtual program at Classic Stage, hopefully points out that this is a big year for Macbeth in various media, that there is a version of Macbeth by Verdi, an opera that's playing at the Metropolitan. We saw a few weeks ago, and as pointed out there, Scotland, PA, a musical based on Macbeth. And here we have the basic source material, the Shakespeare play itself, Macbeth, which I had never seen, honestly. Have you seen Macbeth before, Tamsen?
Not only have I seen Macbeth before, I remember when I saw it. The first time I saw it was actually at Arena Stage.
In Washington.
In Washington. In the 70s.
Yeah.
And I think my mother must have bought a subscription for her and my father to go to plays at the Arena Stage downtown Washington. And she didn't want to go.
Oh, so she sent you.
And so I went with my dad to see Macbeth.
Well, there have been many Macbeths, obviously. And John Toil, the artistic director at Classic Stage, is fond of saying that he's done Macbeth, directed Macbeth many times. And this is a Macbeth that he has sort of pared down to the bone. It is a total of an hour and 40 minutes in length, no intermission. And we got the opportunity afterwards at the opening to speak to others who have seen many Macbeths, and they all confirmed that it was really pared down. And people liked it. They liked it. They thought it was impactful. They thought it was striking. And, of course, Classic Stage has the advantage of being in a 200-person theater. So it tends to make a very strong impression. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
Okay.
You know, the truth is...
Yes.
And I do think I've seen it at least one other time. It's not like I really know it that well.
Right.
So I don't feel I'm the greatest critic.
Right.
I did follow it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something.
Right.
Okay. But, you know, and there were some alterations.
Oh.
Really? Characters played a variety of parts.
Oh, there is that.
And you had to be sometimes on your toes.
Astute,
and because
yes.
there also were switches, there was some gender bending.
Yes.
So that, to a neophyte like me, presented a few challenges.
Yeah, so we should mention, it starred Corey Stoll, who is, to us, most famous in House of Cards. Mary Beth Peel, who's been an actress, has had many, many roles we've seen, and she plays a very prominent set of roles in this Macbeth. Nadia Bowers, who was actually married to Corey Stoll in real life, was Lady Macbeth, fittingly enough. Yeah, I thought it was excellent. I mean, it is Macbeth, so it's hard to say, gee, that's a catchy... Who is this William Shakespeare? That play's pretty good. The play's not pretty good. I mean, it is Macbeth. It's a towering achievement. And again, what is it about? It's about power more than anything. It's about what power does to a person when they try to strive mightily to attain it, perhaps overstep their bounds, perhaps do terrible acts, all for the purpose of attaining power, and what happens to the conscience of a good man when he takes that route. And it's explored in very graphic, haunting terms. We should also mention, it got an excellent review in the New York Times. It is just released this morning. It is a so-called critic's pick, which is not an easy thing to earn. And so, bottom line, if I think you should see it. I recommend it to people. Again, it's pared down to the bone. It's not hours and hours, and I think it's clearly worth seeing. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. I mean, look, it's not The Music Man, but it's pretty serious business, and sometimes even a little bloody, I think it's fair to say.
Well, it was very violent. But lots of Shakespeare is pretty violent.
Right.
I guess he was onto that. The crowds like that.
Well, you know, when I was watching it, I'm saying to myself, in a sense, he took a historical event or set of events and he enlarged on it. and he's telling the story of what happened at this particular point in English history. And he's making a little bit more of it than he otherwise would. But he clearly is sort of the guardrails or English history itself. And he's bringing the history to life to the English people at that time. And obviously the prose is wonderful, and if not poetic, and very striking terms.
Oh, I don't see it as history.
No?
I see it as examinations of man's psyche.
Well, I think he's using history to do that. Yeah, but I mean, he's in a sense, it clearly relates to real events. It takes place in the times just following Mary, Queen of Scots, when her sons, her lineage, or he's the guy who unites English and Scottish together.
All right, don't
all right, let me go into
don't go all historical.
All right, we won't go historical.
And then after the play, there was a party, an opening party.
Right, and we had
so we had fun, and we were spotting various celebrities,
right.
This, that, and the other. And the funny thing is that next to us was an older woman, and everybody kept saying, she's somebody.
Yes.
And we watched even young people come up and literally genuflect in front of her.
Right.
And so finally it turned out that it was the actress Lynn Cohen.
Who I never heard of before.
Who's famous for being Magda.
In Sex and the City.
Yes.
Yes, great.
So
Whatever.
That just shows you, that's just a little vignette that shows you just how out of it we are.
That doesn't mean we're out of it. There were a lot of bigger celebs at that event. Victoria Clark was there, and others who frankly were at the Classic Stage Gala just a few days before, and that was a wonderful event. She sang, and some other notables sang, and that was fantastic. Classic Stage is at high tide right now, so I get your tickets while you still can. We also had the opportunity last week to go to a very, very nice meal. What we should call it, an adult restaurant, a serious restaurant.
You're couching this in such funny terms.
Why?
We had the opportunity. We went out to dinner.
But we go to dinner all the time. But we're going to talk about this. This is a special place. We went to Estiatorio Milos. Milos, yes. Okay. I was giving the Greek impression. It's a Greek restaurant near City Center. It's on 55th Street between 6th and 7th, I believe. And it is well known. It's kind of an interesting thing. I mean,
don't go into it, Daniel. We told the whole story in a previous podcast.
All right. It's just an excellent restaurant. It's
the guy
it's
who
expensive
founded
and it's simple at the same time.
Okay.
And did you want to tell about the people that we met there or not?
Well, we had a great time. We had a great meal.
Yes.
And as usual, one of the things I like about this place is it's a pretty fancy place. All the men are wearing suits.
Really?
Yes. So we're not often in that kind of a crowd.
It's an adult restaurant,
okay?
Yes.
And yet, they make you feel perfectly comfortable. Yes. And food is very simple, I would say, but just exquisite.
Fabulous seafood. Flown in for the event.
Totally grilled Greek fish, seafood restaurant.
And seated next to us is this couple that's seated in the middle of our meal, and shall I say an older couple.
Right.
And the woman who's seated next to you, you had occasion to talk to her. They ordered, and the waiter arrived.
I didn't have occasion.
All right, let me describe the situation.
No,
did you want to describe it?
It's my story.
Go ahead, tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there, and the waiter brings over for these people an enormous grilled lobster with an enormous pile of Greek fries. And the two older people there were wide-eyed. And so I just lean over and say, well, that is spectacular. And I don't know if that reassured them or upset them. But later when we're getting ready to leave, they strike up a conversation with us. And it turns out they had just gotten off the plane from San Francisco. And they had pretty much rushed over here for dinner, and they were delightful. And they said, do you come here every day, all the time? And we said, no, we come here once a year. It's our anniversary. And they said, how many years? We said 37. And they said, we can beat that. We've been married 57.
Right. So that's right. So they were 91. 91. And I was chatting up the guy. We were chatting up his wife. And he's a cantor. And he had many years of service at a congregation in San Francisco where he assured me there's a very large Jewish community. and then on cruise ships following that. And I said to him, like Orthodox? And he looked at me. We're looking at the lobster, and the answer is no, not Orthodox Reformed. But it took a lot of gumption for these people to fly 91 years old, to fly to a city they don't spend much time in and head straight to the restaurant and order this big pile of food right before they visited their daughter, who lives in the Dorado on 80th Street in Central Park West.
Dorado.
Yeah, so
they're in town. Their granddaughter is running the marathon. So they're in town for
another week or so. Yeah.
And, anyway, they were terrific. They were delightful.
And then to his surprise, of course, as things go in situations like that, he started using a few Yiddish expressions with me. And he kept turning sideways at Tamsen, sort of translating. And Tamsen put the kibosh on that. When on the way out, she said to him,
Lashana Tova. A little bit late.
No, it was close enough with Happy Holiday. And his eyes were wide. He was grinning ear to ear. He was just, if Shiksa had landed that point, and he nodded in appreciation. So there you go. So anyways, a lot of fun. Seeing those people.
Yeah.
All right. So you had something on the Dutch Golden Age, which is something I can't say I've given a lot of thought to.
No. Well, I give thought to it all the time.
Is that true?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Because,
the life
Rembrandt, Vermeer, Franz
That's the
Hals.
Dutch Golden Age?
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
fine.
All those guys. Anyway, an article in the New York Times, the Sunday Arts and Leisure section, starts out announcing Elizabeth Samson, an 18th century freeborn black woman, made millions as a coffee planter and exporter using slave labor in the Dutch colony of Suriname. She was one of the wealthiest women in the era, but few people have ever heard her story. And that just flabbergasted me, because I had not heard of her either. I do read about the Golden Age. And so what the rest of the article is about is an exhibition in the Hermitage Museum that has decided not to use the phrase Golden Age anymore to refer to Dutch painting or life at this time, because they feel it leaves out a lot of stories and a lot of people.
Well, what's her story?
Her story is, that's her story.
That's it? Okay.
And she's going to be now included in a group of paintings that houses portraits, the portrait gallery of the Golden Age. She's going to be added to that.
I see.
To be included. And, there are other portraits being crafted kind of after the fact. 21st century people are posing as black figures.
Oh, really?
From...
To recreate the situation?
Well, just to, to be on display.
Wow.
And to, to fill in this story. It's part of, a whole... It's not like they're forgeries,
but
these are old paintings.
Recreate is
but
the right
they're
word,
trying
yes.
to give, a picture
right.
of, a more diverse, a fuller picture of what life was like in, Amsterdam, in the Netherlands at that time. And, not everything was lovely, not everything was perfect. It certainly was, because of all that shipping. A much more diverse culture. And so that's been kind of ignored. Now, not everybody is going for this, all right? The Rijksmuseum will continue to use the term Golden Age. So, don't be worried about that. Anyway, pretty interesting article about what's going on in Amsterdam. And, well, in the Netherlands in general, kind of re-examining that whole period and the various people in it and what were their roles.
Okay. All right. So speaking of continuing to use the same phrase, the World Series is going on. We're sticking with that. And I'm not going to belabor the World Series, particularly since, it's an interesting series, but by the time people hear this, it will be over. It's anybody's series, even now, 3-2.
You don't really feel that, do you?
Yeah, I do.
No,
I do.
You feel...
I do. I tell you right now, there's a path for Washington to win. If Washington wins Game 6, which I think they are likely to do, because Strasburg should outpitch Verlander, in my view, if basically Scherzer wakes up healthy for Game 7, Washington's the favorite.
Okay.
That's the path.
I hear the footsteps.
What does that mean?
Armand is running out to put his money on Houston
Oh, God.
as we speak.
Here's the only thing I
heard it from you.
Let me come back to what I wanted to observe about this series. One of the key things if you're the general manager of a baseball team is you, of course, have to acquire players and you have to have a budget for that. And there's a tremendous variety in how much the teams spend. There is a luxury tax at a figure somewhat above $200 million. And people want to avoid that like the plague. Companies, the teams don't want to have to pay that luxury tax. But there are teams also that are quite the opposite.
Luxury tax on what?
If you spend more than the limit, let's call it $200 million, the league taxes you for every additional dollar you spend. It might be it's $2.
I thought it was like a federal tax.
No. It's a tax imposed by the Major League Baseball people.
Okay.
But there are also teams that barely get by. Tampa Bay had like a $60 million payroll. So the question is, what's the right payroll? What do you need to spend? And here's what's interesting.
To get to the World Series?
Yes. And so you look at Houston, you say, what are they spending? It turns out their salary is $168 million. Now, to put it in context, the highest is Boston Red Sox is $229. So 168 is not the highest. It's healthy. It's not highest. So what do you think Washington's is?
No idea.
Okay. Exactly 168 million.
Really?
They both are exactly the same. The odds against that are astronomical.
What other teams do you know?
I know the Yankees are over 200, but I mean...
What about the Mets?
The Mets are short of 168, I believe. But I don't think we're going to quiz me about what everybody's spending.
No, I'm just curious. I wouldn't quiz you. If you had prepped me at all about this subject, I wouldn't have even asked. But
okay.
I think it's natural to be interested.
The point is that the odds that they're exactly the same. That's the magic number. If you're a general manager, you wake up and say, here's what you should spend. The answer is $168 million.
And then the Yankees wasted all that money.
The Yankees wasted a lot.
And then Boston, Boston. Wow.
You know something? It's funny you say it. The Wall Street Journal wrote an article that said that the Yankees spent $200 million a year for every year in the decade, 2010 to 2020, and came away with no World Series wins. A huge, in the view of the Wall Street Journal, a huge waste.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. The Mets don't have that going against them, but they just don't succeed. Okay, museum update there.
Okay, just a little teeny museum update.
Yeah.
Number one, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
About the Getty Center. They're calling the fire that's out there now the Getty Fire.
Are you serious?
Because it's that close.
Wow.
And we have been to the Getty Center.
We have. But if anybody can afford to do something about it, it's the Getty people.
You know, one of the great things about the Getty Center was the view.
Yes.
From that building.
Wow.
Out over those hills. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Getty Center is like it is and it isn't. You go out there and you say, this is not, the Frick. This is not a small museum. This is huge. It rivals the Metropolitan. Well, of course it doesn't.
No, it doesn't rival.
I was just going to say it doesn't rival the Metropolitan, but it's big. But it's huge.
It's not big.
Huge.
It's all right. Moving right along.
Yes.
But the other thing that's interesting to me, also in California, because there was a section in the New York Times listing all the, kind of a lot of ads for museums and galleries about what's around and what's coming. And one of the things noted was an exhibition of Assyrian relief panels at the Getty Villa. Now, the Getty Villa is ancient art, and it's out in Malibu. We have not been there. It would be fun to go there.
Okay.
Anyway, love the Assyrian panels. The Assyrians, they're the ones, the originators of the Lamassu.
Yeah.
And you love a Lamassu.
Oh, sure.
And,
can't get enough. Yeah.
And the panels are fantastic.
Yeah.
I've spent a fair amount of time in actually... the museum in London.
The Taft?
No, the museum. The British Museum.
The British Museum. Okay.
Yeah. Looking at those panels.
Yeah.
And my favorite is going to be out there. These are all on loan from London. It's going to be out at the Getty Villa. And it's called The Banquet. Ashur Nazapal's Banquet. No, I'm getting this wrong. Ashurbanipal. Anyway, so I love it because it's a garden party. Ashurbanipal and his wife are out in the garden, snacking, lounging on chairs. There are musicians playing. There are servants waving, palm branches to scare away the bugs or whatever, and more food is being brought out, and there are fabulous decorations in the trees. What are the decorations? It's the head and skin of a recently defeated enemy.
Right. All right.
Talk about your garden party decorations. Assyrians. Great. Amazing reliefs. Kind of a brutal culture.
Yes. All right. So, speaking of...
And
what? There can't be anything beyond that.
The Penn Museum.
Yeah.
University of Penn Museum.
Yeah.
Great collection.
Yeah.
Just went through a big renovation. You know, they're famous for the Sumerian excavations of Sir Leonard Woolley, and, all these marvelous Sumerian artifacts. You know, the Sumerians invented pretty much everything. History, the plow, the wheel, base 60. And we still use base 60 today, right?
I don't know what base 60 is.
You do too.
No, I don't.
It's how we tell time.
Okay. All right, fine.
An athlete would know that.
No.
Who are you and what have you done with my husband?
Yeah.
Anyway, that new gallery's opening up at Penn. Let's go.
Okay. Speaking of brutal, here's something you directed me to, because this caught your attention. I guess it fits with the Assyrians. That there's an event called the Be Back Car Care event in Doylestown. Be Back Car Care is exactly what it sounds like. It's an auto shop. You bring in, you have a car taken care of.
I think this is brilliant marketing.
Well, here's the marketing. They ran an event at Be Back Car Care where they took a car that was, I guess, an older car that was kind of beat up. They painted it as if it was a tribute vehicle to the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas Cowboy colors and logo. And then, this being Philadelphia Eagle country, they set it up so that they would charge people $2.50 a hit to take a sledgehammer and hit the car.
Sounds like fun.
$10 for 5 hits. And they spent the afternoon passing this hammer around and smashing up the car. And it's called a smashing good time, and all the money is raised for charity at Be Back Car Care. I'm afraid we've all missed it. This is historical. And I guess it tells you something what goes on in small towns for entertainment.
Well, it sounds like fun.
Does it?
But the car only looks slightly dented up.
So
do you think it was really satisfying?
If
you hit it really hard and it doesn't get that.
There's a
Somehow, this is what I don't understand.
Yeah.
You have people hitting the car with sledgehammers.
Yeah.
You know? I accidentally get up close to a picket fence.
Yeah.
And my car crumbles.
Right.
And
here, you hit it with a sledgehammer, you can't even tell. Yeah.
I don't get it.
There's a point to that. Well, it just shows when you really want to do damage, you can't. In any event, people paid money to do this. They paid money to hit a Dallas Cowboy car. Tells you something about the Philadelphia Eagle fans, right?
So, another thing caught my eye, combining a couple of different interests. One of the great things was when we were in New York. We were in New York partly because it's the time of year when I meet students at the Met and give them a tour. And so usually we spend the night in New York and we get up at the crack and we go for a walk in Central Park when people are allowed to let their dogs run free. And it's really a fun time to be in Central Park. The time of year, it's beautiful. The air was crisp. It was a wonderful morning. And so I noticed this article about about Central Park. A lot of controversy lately because of the statuary in Central Park. It's all men.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there has been this effort, somewhat controversial for a variety of reasons we won't go into today, trying to come up with ideas of women statues to have in the park. And here was an article about some other people who will be commemorated with a monument in Central Park. And that will be members of the Lyons family. Okay, the Lyons were Seneca Village property owners, educators, and dedicated abolitionists running a boarding house for black sailors that doubled as a stop on the Underground Railroad. And so then you're wondering, what is Seneca Village? Seneca Village was an area of about 5 acres, and mostly black community with black property owners in Central Park, roughly between where Central Park is now, and it would have been roughly between what would be 8th Avenue and 7th Avenue, between like 82nd and 89th Street. Okay, and it was founded around, property began to be sold to blacks around 1825, and it flourishes over the next few years. It will have 3 churches, a school, several cemeteries. They will live side by side with Irish immigrants who are having as much sort of discrimination and issues as almost the blacks during this period. So there was similar, sense of being kind of outcasts in the city. And but then the proposal for Central Park comes along, and of course the land is, what do you call that? Legally? Condemned. Yeah. And the property owners, the black property owners, do get compensation.
Oh yeah, that's what condemnation is. Yeah.
But that's the end of Seneca Village. But there are still, there's still remnants there. There are occasionally kind of excavations looking for burial sites, etc.
Yeah, it's funny. The condemnation process is kind of interesting. We saw something about Lincoln Center. You may remember a few months ago, and how it is they created Lincoln Center, which is this huge arts center, of course, on the west side of Manhattan. Yeah. And what you don't realize unless you saw the documentary that we saw is that it was a huge neighborhood with tons of people living there.
And many people displaced.
Right. And so somebody wakes up one morning and said, you know something? We're going to use that for this. We're going to use that to put Lincoln Center. And it wasn't a prosperous community, but it was a decent community. And all these people, we're talking about suddenly they had to leave.
Right. And they're not getting compensation, right?
Well, the landlords got compensation.
The landlords do.
But not the tenants. Not the tenants. And they said goodbye.
Yeah.
That's how you build great things like Central Park. That's how you build great things like Lincoln Center. But you have to have an appetite for that kind of thing. There's a backside of that story.
But in any case, I'm always interested in more sculpture.
Yeah, I'm not as attuned to that as you are. But
well, it's funny. You walk through Central Park, and it's not like each statue really resonates with you. They were products of their time. So I think it is interesting to open it up.
I don't feel strongly one way or another. I actually walked through Central Park without noticing the statues. I just wanted you to realize there are people like that, and you're married to one of them. So you could tell me that the 1924 Philadelphia Athletics or memorialized in Central Park, and I'd say, okay, if you say so. But whatever, I know it matters to a lot of people. Okay. So we had.
I'm not saying it matters.
I think it does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter.
I think maybe it does matter to some people. I'm talking about it. Interesting to me. You walk down, you look at a statue. Yeah. The name means nothing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, in some ways, the statue's there to keep that name alive and keep it meaningful. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's easily done now. We can just look it up on our phone. All right. But it's also interesting to me that 100 years ago, this was a popular, well-known name, celebrity person that everybody would have said, oh, yeah, of course there's a statue.
I tell you what, just to finish that point, all right? So I don't trust that. To me, for example, if you're going over a bridge and you say it's the Hugh Carey bridge, if someone says to me, well, gee, Hugh Carey, that was a big celebrity. No, he was the governor. They named it after the governor. Okay, politicians name things after other politicians. I mean, do I think Hugh Carey is a tremendously important person? I don't. So do I trust the fact that when I see a name on a bridge or in a statue that in fact that's a significant person? I don't.
Well, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
A statue and a bridge. Okay.
I don't know.
Somebody is commemorating a civic monument.
Yeah.
And putting a name on it is different from a portrait of somebody that.
Okay. I'm more skeptical than you are. Okay. I don't accept that at face value. All right. So we have 3 obituaries. The first is something we both kind of got onto, which was this fellow we never heard of named Polak. And here's what's interesting about him. It's more what he did than anything else. What he did was he decided that he wanted to do something that would alleviate, or at least partially alleviate, poverty in some of the poorest parts of the world. And his solution, in his mind, was that it had to be based on free market. In other words, he said that the charitable model just doesn't work. Giving people money just doesn't work. What works is to set up an economy, if you will. And let me give you an example. There's no better way to illustrate than what he did. So, for example, he went to Somalia, and he realized that people would benefit quite a bit by having transportation, by being able to move things around. And he devised, or designed, if you will, a better donkey cart using parts from junked automobiles. And what that did was it created economy in the sense that he designed it in such a way that local blacksmiths could actually build the donkey cart, that folks could buy the donkey cart for a reasonable amount of money, then charge money to others for carting things, because it was an economy for them to have something carted to them and save them money and time.
Firewood, etc. But the key is that he charged the people. The people paid for the carts.
Well,
that's key to his philosophy.
That's key to his philosophy, but it was also key is just the idea that all the different parts of the economy working together. He added value in a sense that you have people specializing. You have people specializing in building donkey carts that had no really aptitude to do that to begin with. And then you have people with ways of using the donkey carts in a profitable way, and people who have a way of benefiting from the donkey carts in a way that's worth their while to pay for it. And he did the same thing with designs for water pumps, as it's called, foot-powered water pumps and the like, and a machine that sort of generated chlorine that you could use to purify water and all that sort of thing, but all along the same model, that it was something that can be built there, something that can be sold there, the product that then could be sold in turn, and it's kind of genius when you think about it, and it's really capitalism, really on a very small scale, and he's betting on the notion that these forces of production are going to be used most economically if he sets it up that way. As you put it, if people are paying for things, you're not relying on people's emotionary aptitude, but just the idea that they're doing it all in their own self-interest. So I thought that was pretty ingenious.
Yeah. So Paul Polak.
Yeah.
Hats off to him. And I read an interesting obituary about Hildegard Bachert.
Mm-hmm.
And she died at the age of 98. And she was actually born in Germany. And she ends up in the U.S., she was Jewish. And she flees to the U.S. Just as things are heating up over there. Her parents follow after Kristallnacht. Then she actually works very hard, goes to school, gets a scholarship to Oberlin, but still can't afford to go to Oberlin. So she ends up going to classes at Hunter, free classes at Hunter in New York City at night. Meanwhile, she's working as a secretary. She's working in a gallery. Somehow gets a job in a gallery, meets a man named Otto Kallier, and who wants to open an art gallery, and she comes to work for him on the promise that she will teach him English. And he founds that gallery, the Galerie Saint-Étienne, in 1939, and it's really the first major gallery to promote Austrian and German expressionists. And they really bring Gustav Klimt, Egon Schiele, Paula Modersohn-Becker, Oskar Kokoschka, Kata Kollwitz, and others, really put them on the map for the sort of New York market. And she says, that, at the beginning, in the 50s, they had Egon Schiele drawings for like $10. Recently an Egon Schiele drawing sold for $2.2 million. So she works her way out from secretary to co-director, and she never actually retired. She only moved to Vermont full time at a certain point. They also were didn't actually discover Grandma Moses, but early on represented her and got the rights to her work. You know, the primitive sort of Grandma Moses type pictures.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, that became her whole. She flourished in the 50s. She was discovered by in upstate New York by a guy who was like in the the state water engineering department or something. Most galleries were not interested. Bachert and Collier saw something in her. They get the rights, and she ends up getting all kinds of deals with greeting card companies, shows, reproductions, etc. And as she put it, they used Grandma Moses to kind of support to Sheila and the other, the gallery as a whole, for the more sort of sophisticated works or the complicated,
whatever.
I mean, this was, a whole, she said she learned more from Grandma Moses about the intrinsic value of art than she learned from
Grandma
anyone
Moses
else.
considered outsider art or not?
I couldn't really say. It doesn't seem so. I would say folk art. I don't know about outsider.
Okay. I mean, it's not my phrase. I mean, I just hear it once in a while.
Okay. But I think the other thing she said about Grandma Moses was her work seems wonderfully sentimental and nostalgic.
Right.
And she said Grandma Moses was not like that at all. Anyway, so she never stops working. Okay, she has an apartment on the Upper West Side, still with the furniture her parents managed to bring over from Germany, etc. And she says, I couldn't stop working. I was too into it. I work more now in my old age than I ever did. She said, Collier thought we should have some time to ourselves. She said, he was the boss. He could say that. Now that I'm the boss, I don't take time off.
All right. Good for her. All right. So we close, a couple of things that are related, but kind of closing. Lotte Reinenger is the last obituary. And this is, I thought this was interesting, and I think I've seen something like this, but I can't be sure. And what it says in the Times in the headline, even before Disney, she's told fanciful stories in animated films with her hand-cut paper silhouettes. It's a woman who basically just that, hand-cut silhouettes. And they would be used to make animated films. Her biggest classic being the 1926 silent film, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. And what they did was, she would take, this was the process. The figures in the backgrounds are laid out on a glass table. A strong light from underneath makes there are wire hinges to give subtle movements, makes the wire hinges disappear and throws up the black figures in relief. And then a camera is used to take pictures, and they take successive pictures after you move the limbs of the various characters a little bit every time, and you take another picture, and you take a zillion pictures, and you have all these cells, and you put them together, and it's animated.
Sounds strangely like animation.
It's animation. It is animation. It's totally animation, and apparently it was haunting animation.
Her figures, I'm looking at the picture. Her figures remind me a lot of the contemporary artist Kara Walker. I don't know if you're familiar.
Of course, the answer is no,
okay,
but I don't doubt you for a moment.
So I wonder if there's any kind of connection there.
Well, all I know is they asked A.O. Scott, the movie reviewer for the Times, about it, and he said he praised Reininger's blend of whimsy and spookiness, her dreamy images that tap right into the collective unconscious, that suggests an antidote to Disney. And I'm saying, wait a minute. Antidote to Disney. And maybe what he's talking about is the recent Disney or something like that. But we had occasion to talk about something else because it is Halloween. And we found ourselves, or at least I started talking about the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Because there was several articles about Washington Irving and what that story was and how it resonated and what the real point of it was. And there was reference every once in a while to popular culture, namely there's been a television series based on the Legend of Sleepy Hollow and a movie with Johnny Depp a couple of years ago. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. There's the seminal Legend of Sleepy Hollow is the Disney cartoon, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which we both saw when we were impressionable, 8 years old, 9 years old. which is one of the most striking and memorable cartoons I've seen in my entire life. And it turns out it was released as The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad in 1949, before our time, but then cut up to be part of the wonderful world of Disney when we saw it when we were young, just short of the age of 10. And I will just lay it out there for those of you with young children, or even not. If you really want to get into the Legend of Sleepy Hollow at the time of Halloween, there is only one thing to see, and that is the Disney cartoon, narrated and voiced by Bing Crosby. It is fantastic. It's right up there with Reininger's silhouettes in terms of creating a memorable image and a very striking story. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's a little scary.
It's terribly scary. It's
okay.
Even
you
now
don't
I haven't
recommend it to everybody with tiny tots.
Well, not tiny tots, but it is something.
Maybe to adults.
It is
maybe it's worth a second look.
It's not a treacly, saccharine thing. It is a striking use of animation. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, The Adventures of Ichabod. Okay, that's all we've got. Halloween coming up. Everybody enjoy a happy Halloween.
Getting your costume ready?
I don't have much time, but now that you put it that way, I certainly will.
All right. So this is Tamsen Granger.
And Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan Read the Paper. We'll see you again next week.